Welcome back. It was a bit of a short break, apologies. I think we're on time at the moment. We want to make the most of the panel discussion. So I will leave the floor to Denis.
Thank you very much, Paul. I want to suggest that we start by going around the speakers and see what they want to add at this stage to what's been presented during the symposium. And I will keep an eye open as we go round the speakers, giving their, as it were, summing up thoughts, to see what then comes in by way of questions for the panel to carry the discussion on. And then at the end, I will do a 5-minute brief summing up of where I think we've got to. I wonder, is it fair to go in the order of presentations? And of course, that means that the short spoon ends up in the hands of Andrew. What are your reactions as, I suppose one could call you now, a health economist?
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call yourselves. What are your reactions to this symposium, and what would you like to say in a minute or two?
Well, it's been fascinating for me, both today and just moving into this longevity space, because as I say previously, my world had been mainly, financial world, central bankers, ministries of finance, and it is extraordinary to discover what is happening. And of course, longevity affects so many aspects of life. I guess I'll just try and say something rather sort of big and all-encompassing, which is there's an enormous appetite, I find, because people know that things are happening differently, that they are aging differently from previous generations, and they need to. And you can feel this momentum building. When I first wrote The 100-Year Life, outside of Japan, there really wasn't much interest in the topic, and you can just sense more and more interest. I think what is challenging is, which I'm sure the frontier of science has always been, is just, effectively being talking about the malleability of age today. And we've been hearing biologically about how we can make age malleable. But I do wonder about society and how malleable we can be with our approach to age. There is a lot of ageism around, and I sometimes wonder if it might be easier scientifically to try and change our attitudes to aging than it will be to actually change society, because there are so many deeply entrenched views about what aging is and how it manifests itself and how fixed it is. And there's another Oxford academic, Keith Thomas, who wrote a lovely paper where he pointed out that around about 18th, 19th century, we started to get better government records about births and deaths, and we started to get obsessed about chronological age. And from that point, we then started to divide people from being young and being old, and we measure everything chronologically. And, wonderful to hear all the progress being made from a science point of view. I just worry a little bit about people getting ahead of that, because society has a lot of adjusting to do to really buy into this. And I guess that the issue is, do we see it as part of health, or do we actually call it about aging? And I just find we are so messed up around concepts of aging that I wonder if we should just talk about this as about health.
A good question to you then, Andrew, would be in relation to the adjustments society has to make. How much are governments listening to what you've been saying? I mean, frankly, it's utterly shocking. We've got a time bomb, which if we don't do anything to prepare for it, I mean, we've got enough of a problem in relation to healthcare in the United Kingdom, and I imagine this must also be true elsewhere. And the pandemic, of course, has exaggerated that in terms of the huge problems of balancing the spiraling costs of healthcare with the ability of society to pay for it, not just in terms of what can we afford, but also what can governments actually do that is, as it were, compatible with them getting elected, quite apart from any other matter. So how much do you think the governments are listening to, first, whether a real time bomb is brewing and that they ought to prepare for it, and what to try to do about it?
Yeah, and by the way, I think health is going to just rise as a share of GDP, irrespective of whether we have the diseases of age-related diseases or the interventions we're talking about here that slow down aging. Health rises share of GDP. The longer we live, the more valuable it is. And rather than spend those resources on taking care of age-related diseases or trying to stop them. So I think health just gets bigger and bigger. I think we're likely to see some shifts in where we spend that money. We just talked about nutraceuticals, for instance, rather than just the actual formal health system. I think we're going to see a massive increase in public health. But to answer your question, where are governments on this? I think part of it is this sort of obsession with chronological age. So aging is seen about something about end of life. And, it's about supporting old people. And it can't be. And I think that's a real challenge. I often talk to governments who say, oh, I haven't got an aging society. My population is very young. But we've got to make sure that the future old are the fittest old that has ever had. And that's about the young. So there's all sorts of challenges. I think governments are beginning to wake up to it. What I find is that governments are beginning to recognize that there is a different message to be had here, one that is positive and not negative. My worry is they're going to jump on this in a very simplistic way and just say, let's just have everyone working to their 80. And actually, that's not what has to happen. We've got to make sure that we can, at middle age, improve people's life, their health and their skills, so they can be productive for longer. If all we do is just extend their working careers and do nothing else, life's going to get pretty miserable. So I think where we are, and this is why I try to emphasize this new epidemiological transition. In the beginning of the 20th century, we had a massive public health initiative that made sure that across all income groups, we saw a big fall in infant mortality, and we saw a big improvement in education across the board at that age group. We've sort of got to do the same now for sort of 45, 50 plus. We've got to make sure that we get widespread improvements in reductions in mortality and improvements in health, which of course in the UK and US we're not. That's going to be a lot about public health rather than just the NHS, for instance, directly. And allied with that, we've got to start thinking too about how we give people the skills and adult education to carry on. So I would say it's like reinserting that massive public health agenda in the 40s and 50s, but my goodness, that's going to be a big change, but it was in the 20th century. And the question then is, who's going to push and articulate that? So I think that's going to be public debate about the awareness and the need for it. And we're starting to see it in various countries with various firms, but we sort of need a sort of civil society movement that will start to push governments to do this. I think it's happening. I think we're seeing a raft of social engagement around this topic, but it's going to take a long while to unpick deep-seated prejudices about what we do at each age and the true extent of what is possible. So it's going to take a while before it happens. Hence, I do wonder if the science may make the breakthrough sooner than social practice.
Interesting in relation to some of the questions coming through too. The one raises the question of scientific literacy in relation to all of these questions. But I want at this stage to go through the rest of the panel. I wonder whether Professor Yoshi Mori, do you have any comments you want to contribute to this closing discussion? And once again, thank you for a phenomenal presentation of your work.
Thank you. So I learned a lot today, and especially I was impressed by Leslie's talk because I totally agree with her concept. I mean that so of course the autophagy goal is developing medicine, but I think so food-derived materials probably better than medicine, because already Leslie showed that medicine is quite difficult, and prevention of disease is better than cure of disease, economically and of course personally. So nowadays in Japan, so lifespan is already very high, but the health span is not so. So people are eager to have healthy aging. And of course, the government also, because we have national insurance system. So budget of government is very, very pressured by cost of disease treatment in aged people. So we need good health span, and I think autophagy is one of the key factor for this. So of course, our other anti-aging study is important, and I also think that so we should have international network of anti-aging study, or so not only academia but also industrial company and office, government, everything. So yeah, I hope to make such kind of network in the world.
I hope, Professor Yoshi Mori, that when I next visit Osaka Daigaku, I will have the opportunity to meet up with you. We can pursue such matters. Incidentally, as you will know, I am an associate visitor for one of your pharmacology departments, formerly led by the great electrophysiologist Professor Kurachi. So maybe we can pursue this actually when we are able to meet face to face. So I pass on now to Katja. What are your thoughts in relation to the development of the symposium?
So I would like to make 3 points. One is that we need to do a proper trials with these nutraceuticals in a drug way, like drugs are also trialed with randomized blind studies and controlled and so forth. I think that would be very important from my point of view, and that's why we're trying to do that. Secondly, I would like to bring together maybe the different tissues that people look at in terms of aging. So when anything is trialed or tried out, that we not only look at the immune system, but we would also get together with somebody working on neurodegeneration, or so a bit more harmonization and working together on these different tissues would be really helpful. And thirdly, because, for example, there's already been clinical trials with spermidine, but then they didn't take blood from the volunteers, and we could have looked at the immune system if we had known. Yeah. So, and thirdly, what I find in the aging field is quite difficult from the scientific point of view, from the cell point of view, is that there's so many things that change with age, and we need to, then the people don't talk to each other. There's DNA repair, there's telomere shortening, there's immune senescence, there's all sorts of things, mitochondrial health that go wrong, but people often don't bring these together very much. And autophagy is one of the fields where it often does come together, because a lot of the things that Sandra, for example, mentioned could all be down to autophagy levels falling, ROS and metabolism and epigenetics could also be anyway. So I think that there in the aging field, in the aging conferences, there's all these sessions on these different topics, but people go to sleep when it's not their session, basically, and there's not enough cross-fertilization. It's starting now, but it's in its infancy, and that's because the aging scientific field is very young, and we we need to catch up on these things a little bit in this field.
Thank you very much, Katja, and thank you again for the splendid research that you presented to us in your own presentation. I'll pass on now to Sandra in the United States. If you're still awake, Sandra, you look very much awake.
Well, I will tell you that the sun is rising, so it is now my daytime. So I am hopefully awake. And I'd like to just impress a few points from the clinical perspective. So as a physician, I think that overall we need to shift from the reactive medicine model that we have now to a preemptive medicine model. So I firmly believe that by addressing these issues that we know are going to arise over time, that we can stave off a lot of disease and just avoid it in the first place, which then again changes the mindset of humanity. And I think we need to talk about health span rather than lifespan. At least in the United States, people look at me like I'm crazy. Why would I want to be 120? Because they envision their grandparents not doing so well, being very frail, unable to lead healthy lives. So by stressing the importance of a health span, it basically means we can be as old as we can be physiologically, but just be very active. And I think that's what we sort of need to bring home to the general public. And then the last thing I want to sort of make sure people understand, not in this panel, but in the general public, is that frequently people think that longevity medicine is sort of crockery and that we're all sort of crazy and none of this is scientifically sound. And so one of my goals is to take the reasons that we age, make them understandable, and then translate into things that people can actually do to improve their own lives. And I'd like to echo what Katja said. You're right. I think scientists live in silos. And one of my goals was to tie all of the reasons that you age into one big, giant, understandable theory so that people can understand it and create reasonable longevity protocols that are sort of specific to the individual. So I think that we're all going in the right direction and we need more symposiums like this to tie it all together and then to bring the public into our conversations.
Thank you very much for that, Sandra. And let me say that if any other panelist wants to intervene in this discussion, please just unmute yourself and intervene. But we pass on now to Dr. Ishido. Do you have any remarks you want to conclude with in the
Yeah, so this symposium, I learned a lot. Exactly the keyword, healthy aging is very important. And I totally agree. It's very important, but challenging to think about how to make a mechanism for people to take better care themselves. And especially in Japan, there might be some cultural hurdle. So yes, at least I think there are several things we need to think to do. So one thing is, we need to increase our awareness about this issue among the public, and also we need to think about some evidence generation, as Professor Katja Simon mentioned. Definitely some kind of clinical evidence is very important to for the people to realize what's the issue. And so yeah, actually Professor Yoshi Mori founded the Japan Autophagy Consortium last year, and exactly currently the members are discussing about these issues, but it's really good hint. I can get many hints from this symposium. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your very good contribution too on how you are working with the University of Osaka to commercialize the research that is emerging. So we come now to the inspirer of all of this. Leslie, you've enthralled us with your own personal story, which certainly gives weight to your own convictions about what you're trying to do. And I wonder what your feelings are before I come to my own summing up of the meeting and to a little story about how long I've been interested in senescence. But first of all, Leslie, over to you. Are you happy with the way this has gone? Question one. Two, what are your own thoughts about the presentations and what we've heard? And what are we going to do about this now? Because we can't just have one symposium and think we've solved the problems.
Right.
Anyway, I've got too many questions for you. Over to you.
Well, of course, I'm thrilled to do this because having lived in Oxford, worked with many scientists here at the university for over a decade, I'm really excited that we've been able to bring not just Oxford scientists, but Osaka University scientists, and also the best of our clinicians and economists, say at London Business School, all together and share them with the world. That's one of the things that Zoom does, but also that COVID has taught us, that it is actually easier to share this than we think. In terms of what I'm hoping will happen in the future, I do hope that industry will become more interested. And I said that we need to think about a pharmacy with an M. Our food system, if someone asked, why do the Japanese have such a low spermidine content? These were in the slides from Dr. Kaufmann. That is actually not in the traditional Japanese diet. That is actually in the modern diet, which is devoid of spermidine. Actually, the traditional Japanese diet would be very high. If we can get industry, companies like AB Foods or Nestle, Unilever, these companies that actually control what is in our food supply to think about this and make it a wise commercial decision for them, show them that functional foods are not just a benefit to society, but a benefit to their bottom line, and will create a better point of differentiation for them competitively vis-a-vis others in the market, then I think we might go some way towards helping solve this, because someone talked about how difficult it would be to change society's views of these things. How do you get the average consumer to make the right decision? Well, you start by giving them the right choices, right? And at the moment, if you go into the supermarket, you see a lot of people who put bad choices into the shopping cart. So just starting there, I think, would be helpful. But you're right, one symposium won't do it. However, how great that we've all extended our contacts and our networks today through this, and hopefully those who viewed the symposium will have done so too. We can only solve this problem not by trying to reinvent the wheel, but by learning from each other.
Well, thank you very much, Leslie, and congratulations to you on bringing all of this together. That just leaves my co-moderator. Paul, you were probably thinking you were going to escape this round, but I think we, as a clinician and as a general practitioner and former oncologist, what do you want to say about the beginning before I come to the end?
Yes, I mean, I think what's really important from my day-to-day practice is that mindset. I think patients need to take, well, ideally, their responsibility for their own health. I think that sort of ties into education, but also in terms of a greater awareness in society. And I think the symposium is one of these things where we are hopefully making that first step into that consciousness of what is actually needed. Sure, we do talk about medications a lot. If it's mental health, it might be in terms of psychological therapies. In terms of diet, we have myriads of types of diets, very difficult to know which one's what. We've got supplements, and again, in this case, we've got the nutritional side of things, and then hopefully with companies like Leslie's and Ishido-san's and further collaborations, we will actually get the other aspects to this. And I think we need to have a really sort of a holistic picture in terms of maintaining health. And I think in terms of course, the social aspects, as Andrew mentioned as well, I think these are all things that we need to integrate together. And I think the symposium is a starting point. So that's my take on the symposium.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, and thank you to all the panelists. I think it's just a bit early for me to do so, but I think I'll launch into my final remarks, unless any panelist has a particular wish to come in at this stage. Oh, there's a good, interesting comment from one of the listeners, which I must read. Should we talk about improving quality of life, aging lifespan, and even health span imply an end date? Leslie, he reminds us, was 39 when she changed her life. Incidentally, this is a comment from one of our most distinguished listeners, Professor Chaz Ballantrae. Thank you very much, Chaz. I thought I'd read that out before I come to my concluding remarks. Now, I asked myself a question before getting too deeply involved in all of this, and it's been a delight to be involved in it, which is that I get used to a very interesting question that gets asked about me. As I switched my field and focus of research about 20 years ago from working on the pacemaker of the heart to being concerned with the foundations of modern biology, and particularly with molecular biology and its consequences for evolutionary biology, the first question that came up from very offended evolutionary biologists in the United States was, what on earth has this man got to contribute to our subject? Well, I'll tell you one reason why one should encourage people to be interdisciplinary. Many of the most important discoveries are made by people who switch field and who bring the insights from one field into another field. And one of the things I like about this symposium is interdisciplinarity. We've gone all the way from the economics of senescence through its science to the commercialization of possible ways of dealing with it. But to the question, why should somebody like Denis Noble be interested in old age and senescence? Well, one is that I'm actually very old. This is my 85th year. That's one point. But I also had an interest in this 65 years ago. When I was a student at University College London, I had the privilege of being lectured to by the very earliest contributor to work on, wait for it, the biology of senescence. And that, I'm holding this up in a funny way because unfortunately everything turns the wrong way on a screen. The biology of senescence in 1956, I was just a student then, and I bought this from the local bookshop, was written by Alex Comfort, who trained with the great immunologist and transplantation expert, Peter Medawar, who of course got the Nobel Prize for his work on transplantation. Now, I thought I'd read to you, first of all, the ending of Alex Comfort's book, 65 years ago. Much modern research into aging tends to be desultory, meaning getting nowhere at all, moribund, although the single subjects of which it deals are important in themselves. Alex Comfort clearly saw that importance, and he finished his book with "Senescence, like Mount Everest, challenges our ingenuity by the fact that it is there, and the focusing of our attention on it is unlikely to be fruitless." Well, I think this symposium has shown, first of all, that the study of senescence is no longer desultory, utter transformation from the situation 65 years ago, and that we are actually meeting the challenge of ingenuity. But when I confessed that I had a copy of Alex Comfort's book, one of the panelists, I won't identify which, said, "Hey, wait a minute, this can't be the Alex Comfort who wrote The Joy of Sex, can it? Well, yes. What's the connection? You see, I think Alex Comfort knew what the connection was, and so do people in Japan, incidentally. I was privileged about 10 years ago, and then more recently, just 2 years ago, to be able to visit the Imperial Palace in Tokyo, to view the utterly remarkable 30 scrolls of what is called the I Shin Ho. Rough translation of the characters for that would be the heart of the prescription of medicine. This was the great treasure in Japan. It is a national treasure, particularly the oldest version of it, which is in the Tokyo National Museum. This was written by Tamba Yasuyori, the physician to the emperor in 984. So it's over 1,000 years old. It is a compilation of virtually the whole of Chinese medicine as it was known at that time. Scrolls 29 and 30 are interesting because they concern nutrition. So he was a nutraceuticalist, if that's the right word, 1,000 years before you, Leslie, before any of us, detailed recommendations in scrolls 29 and 30 on the question of nutrition. Of course, the earlier scrolls deal with all the various aspects of medicine. You see, this for that and that for this and so on. And you end up with scroll 27, which completes all of that. There's one scroll right in the middle, and it's scroll 28. What's the subject of scroll 28? How 3 mythical maidens taught the ancient Chinese emperors how to behave in the bedroom. In other words, this is the sex manual of 1,000 years ago from Japan. So the fact that somebody like Alex Comfort should realize that one of the best medications for keeping oneself reasonably young is in fact to indulge in the arts of the bedroom. And I thought I'd finish these strange remarks at the end of the symposium with the quote at the beginning of Alex Comfort's book. He quotes from the Russian Ilya Mechnikov. To the question propounded, I can only make one answer. Yes, it is useful to prolong human life. It's not just an economic issue. It's not just a medical issue. It's not just a problem for the governments around the world. It's also that there is, I don't know how best to put it, there's an extraordinary urge in us all to want to know more, to experience more, and indeed, as Mechnikov put it, it is useful to prolong life. If this symposium has contributed to that, then I think it's a big success. And with that, I think we actually come almost bang on time to closing the symposium. So a big thank you to everybody, and particularly to our contributors from a long way away, Japan and the United States. And let's find a way of doing what Professor Yoshi Mori referred to, the need to form some kind of way in which all of this continues, and as an international academic and industrial collaboration. And that finishes the symposium.
Bye-bye.
Many thanks to everyone. Bye-bye.